Hello, welcome to the Phil Garris Show. We got a great show for you today. Today, we're going to be looking at Republicans and their tactics to get you to vote for their agenda. Are you a GOP sucker? The GOP seems to think you're a sucker, because if you listen to their tactics, you will certainly feel like a sucker. And today, after this message, we will be going after how they manipulate you with their tactics. So hang on to your handlebars and tighten that seatbelt, and we're going to be right back.
Educational, informative, controversial content to keep you free. This is the Radio for Freedom Network, featuring the Phil Garris Show, broadcasting from the city beautiful Orlando, Florida.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And we're going to be talking about, are you a GOP sucker? The GOP seems to think you're a sucker when you consider looking at their tactics and how they try to manipulate you. But before we get started, I like to talk about my experience on Facebook this morning. As you well know, I have a Phil Garris Show Facebook page, and I often post articles and such, mostly about Trump and the GOP and how Trump is a treasonous president. And let me tell you, it really draws out the alt-right. They think they're conservative, but they're really not. I don't think any of these people ever heard of Barry Goldwater. But anyway, they start coming after me after they can't think of a good argument to really support their position. They start attacking me personally. So I was talking to another podcaster, and he was telling me, he said, look, Phil, you're doing your job. If they start coming after you and attacking you personally, that's because they have nothing to say, and you've pushed them in a corner, and they're losing the argument. And that's our last straw that they're grasping, is to try to hurt you, to try to make you feel little. And I was thinking about that, and I said, that seems like to be the whole pattern of the GOP and the Republicans, is that they want to make themselves feel better and hurt other people. They got this thing about being big and strong. Vote for us because we're big and strong. And there's a weird psyche about that, is that if people feel threatened, they think they need to be big and strong. But the reality is, if you're kind and you're considerate to people, you're really the strong one. It's easy to be violent. It's easy to be rough. It's easy to call people names. But when you're doing that, man, you're down deep in the gutter. You're an authoritarian. You've become a dictator. You've become pure scum. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I'm calling them names, and I don't want to do that. I take that back. They're not pure scum. They're just desperate, because their president will probably be indicted or impeached, and he will be gone. The writing is on the wall for Donald Trump. The jig is up for Donald Trump. The walls are closing in on Donald Trump. So you're seeing the Republican Party and the supporters of the Republican Party getting desperate. So what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to prop up their base. They're going to try to talk to people and say, look, you need to be with the strong party. You need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You need to stay away from those bleeding heart liberals who will crash our economy with their liberal agenda, giving free food and housing and phones and health care to immigrants. Of course, that is really outrageous. Another tactic they'll use is that they'll gin up the fear. There's attack protesters, and they're coming after you. Do you remember that lady in the elevator when she confronted Flake and she was concerned about women being sexually assaulted? Some people in the GOP called her an attack protester. And remember the caravan of immigrants? Watch out for the caravan of immigrants. They're bringing disease. MS-13 is coming with machetes to chop your head off. There's Middle Easterners in that mob. There's criminals in that mob. They're bringing drugs in. And if they get into the United States, they're going to rape your daughter, chop your head off with their machetes, and they're going to steal your car, and the Democrats are going to give them free health care. Now that sounds silly, but these are the tactics the Republicans are using. Another fear tactic they like using is calling the press the enemy of the people. I guess I never read the First Amendment, or they don't understand why a free press is important and how it keeps the government in balance and in check. But they like to tell you that they're the liberal press. And if you let the press run wild, they're going to talk Americans into impeaching Donald Trump. They're going to promote the liberal agenda, and then we're all going to be in trouble. You won't have a job. You won't have a car. You won't have health care, because health care is going to be too expensive for you to buy. Another thing Republicans like to use is the economy. Now, the economy is doing good, but the economy was doing good when Barack Obama was president just before he left. I mean, there was substantial growth in Barack Obama's last quarter. So Donald Trump is actually riding on the coattails of Barack Obama, but they don't want to tell you that. What they want to tell you is if you vote Democrat, you're going to lose your job. There's going to be massive government regulation and taxation. And business owners and business leaders are going to hoard their money and not invest in plants, not invest in a small city in the South that needs a plant to operate to help people make ends meet. Well, I can tell you one thing. The Republicans are only interested in concentrating wealth for 1% for all those people. But the reality is, if you look at American history ever since World War II, the American economy has done better in gross domestic product growth under Democrats than Republicans. Believe it or not. Look it up. The stock market, like I mentioned, is doing better, but we got some bad news in the month of December. It's on track to be the worst stock market ever since the Great Depression. There's been a massive sell-off. There's fears in the economy now. There's fears that it might be overheated. In fact, the Fed today is going to vote whether they're going to raise interest rates or not. Republicans will do anything to hang on to power. They're in real trouble. Just yesterday, the Trump Foundation was ordered to stop, and Donald Trump may not be able to be involved in any charity for 10 years because of his personal dealings with the Trump Foundation. Can you imagine somebody starting a charitable foundation and keeping the money for themselves? And like the judge said, there was self-dealing for the Trump family within this organization. How could a person do such a thing? Wow, really makes you think. Get your head around that one. The President of the United States was ordered to close his charitable foundation because he was self-dealing and dipping into it and taking the money and using the money for his own benefit. How low can you be? And Trump, I believe 17 of his organizations now are being investigated by the Department of Justice. This man's in real hot water. And we don't even know if he's been indicted. There may be a secret indictment against Trump. So when he leaves office, the statute of limitations doesn't run out, and he's prosecuted, but I don't know if he's going to make it that long. He may pull a Richard Nixon, and he may resign. He may be arrested in office, because nobody is above the law in the United States, and we certainly learned that during Watergate. If you're not old enough to remember Watergate, it's very interesting. Go back and take a look at it. You'll learn a lot. There's a lot of similarities between the Trump administration and Watergate. But I'll say one thing. Richard Nixon was a lot smarter than Donald Trump. It took decades to catch up with Richard Nixon. They used to call him Tricky Dick. And look at Trump. Barely in office 2 years. 17 of his organizations now are being investigated. One was shut down yesterday. My God, this Republican Party is in one hell of a mess. And we all might be better off for it. Good riddance to authoritarian government and this tyranny they're casting upon the American people. Thanks for listening to the Phil Garris Show, and have a good day.